Whilst most of the Western world was preparing to celebrate Christmas and the nation of Israel was getting ready for Hanukkah, the United Nations Security Council on Friday, the 23rd of December 2016, passed a shocking and biased resolution against Israel. To make matters worse, the British government voted for this resolution, and according to news reports, British diplomats helped draft the resolution with their American counterparts. The United Nations Security Council Resolution 2334 targeted the Jewish settlements in the biblical heartland of Israel, Judea and Samaria, by declaring that they have no legal validity and constitute a flagrant violation of international law. The resolution was passed by 14 nations, including Britain, and is a clear departure of US foreign policy. The Obama administration abstained in the vote, leaving Israel to the mercy of her enemies. Previously, US administrations would have voted against such a biased resolution, and Britain could have vetoed it as they are a permanent member of the UN Security Council. Instead, the hard-working Jewish settlers in the mountains of Judea are singled out for being the obstacle to peace. The UN resolution states that Israel is occupying Palestinian territory in East Jerusalem, the home of the Western Wall, the holiest site in Judaism, and the Old City. The Security Council demanded that Israel immediately and completely cease all settlement activities in occupied Palestinian territories, including East Jerusalem. In a troubling departure of the UN Security Council Resolution 242 that states that Israel has a right to secure and peaceful borders, which has been the foundation of the peace negotiations between Israel and our Arab neighbours for decades, the UN is demanding that Israel concedes the entire territory that she won in the Six-Day War of June 1967. If this were to be implemented, then Israel would have to return to its dangerously unsecure borders prior to the war. The resolution went on to state that the UN does not recognise Israeli sovereignty in East Jerusalem, despite this being the historical and spiritual capital of the Jewish people. The UN like to state that Jerusalem is divided between Arab East and Jewish West Jerusalem, but there is no division because it is a united and functioning city. This resolution also threatens religious freedom in Jerusalem that is fiercely protected by the Israeli government. The resolution also states that Jewish settlements are the main obstacle to peace between Israel and the Palestinian Authority, but the Palestinian leadership believe that Israel has no right to exist as a Jewish state in the heart of the Middle East. To understand the seriousness of the implications of Britain and America's involvement in the passing of this UN resolution, we need to consider how this threatens Israel's security and diplomatic position. The UN resolution is not legally binding and only contains recommendations for the international community to follow, but it will result in direct political negotiations with Israel and the Palestinians becoming almost impossible. This resolution attempts to resolve the big issues such as settlements, Jerusalem, and the final borders of Israel without any diplomatic negotiations and agreement between Israel and the Palestinian Authority. It supports the Palestinians' maximum position and gives no incentive for the Palestinian Authority to return to the negotiation table, allowing them to get what they want through international pressure against Israel. The resolution will also encourage greater boycotts, divestments, and sanctions against Israel, as they can claim that Israel is not acting in accordance with this UN resolution. Could also lead to legal action being taken against Israel's political leaders. The resolution also states that Judea and Samaria and East Jerusalem are Palestinian territories, even though under international law this is currently not the case, as it is termed disputed territory. This resolution also undermines the current political and legal framework of the peace process, known as the Oslo Accords, by removing the role and responsibility of the US, the EU, the UN, and Russia as the supervisors in direct negotiations between the Israelis and the Palestinians. The resolution does not address the Palestinian leadership's refusal to recognize Israel as a Jewish state and does not confront the issue of Palestinian incitement of hatred and violence against Israel in its media and education systems, which are the main obstacles for a lasting peace. The resolution advocates a two-state solution but does not question the validity of a Palestinian state that would be very vulnerable to a Hamas takeover either through direct elections or a coup. This would potentially turn the Palestinian Authority into an extremist Islamist state that would destabilize the entire Middle East. In an article in the Jewish Chronicle entitled UK-Israel Relations Cool after United Nations Security Vote, it claims that British diplomats were involved in drafting and wording of the resolution. It also suggests that Britain actively encouraged other UN member states to vote for the resolution, and that this is part of the Prime Minister Theresa May's new policy approach to Israel. The article claims that she considers that Israeli settlements are one of the main obstacles to peace talks, and that the UN vote was the British government's first step in re-emphasising of the long-standing UK policy against settlements. Prime Minister May made this clear in a speech at the Conservative Friends of Israel's annual lunch back in December 2016, when she said,
"When talking about global obligations, we must be honest with our friends like Israel, because that is what true friendship is about. That's why we have been clear about building new illegal settlements. It is wrong, it is not conducive to peace, and it must stop."
To make Britain's betrayal of Israel even worse, the news article claims that our diplomats worked for days producing the resolutions, making the words acceptable for the US so that they could say that they did not formulate it and could abstain on the vote, enabling it to be passed. The deceitfulness of the British government and the US administration goes further by claims that they persuaded the New Zealand government to be the main sponsor of the anti-Israel resolution, together with Malaysia, Senegal, and Venezuela. Britain being behind this shameful UN resolution makes no political sense, because President Obama will be out of office in a matter of weeks, and Britain will need the support of the new pro-Israel Trump administration. The resolution also goes against British policy that for over 20 years supported direct negotiations between Israel and the Palestinians, instead of enforcing an international solution that directly supports the Palestinian position. US Secretary of State John Kerry followed up his administration's attack on Israel by publicly slating the Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu and his government by claiming it is the most right-wing in Israel's history, with an agenda driven by the most extreme elements. Following the vote, Obama came under attack from Republicans for not protecting Israel in the United Nations. The Speaker of the House of Representatives, Paul Ryan, called the decision to abstain as absolutely shameful and promised that our unified Republican government will work to reverse the damage done by this administration and rebuild our alliance with Israel. Senator John McCain, the former Republican presidential nominee, said it made us complicit in this outrageous attack on Israel. Our newly elected President Donald Trump went against US protocol for an incoming president by tweeting a series of messages in support of Israel. He tweeted, "We cannot continue to let Israel be treated with such total disdain and disrespect. They used to have a great friend in the US, but not anymore. The beginning of the end was the horrible Iran deal, and now this UN. Stay strong, Israel. January the 20th is fast approaching." If Donald Trump decides to fulfill his campaign promise and move the US embassy from Tel Aviv to Jerusalem, it will go a long way in countering this shameful UN resolution. It will also send a message to the rest of the international community that the world's only superpower recognizes Israeli sovereignty over her eternal city. The Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu responded to the UN security vote by refusing to recognize it and accused President Obama of carrying out a shameful ambush for going back on his 2011 commitment to protect Israel in the United Nations.
Would make negotiations harder and drive peace further away. And as I told John Kerry on Thursday, friends don't take friends to the Security Council. I'm encouraged by the statements of our friends in the United States, Republicans and Democrats alike. They understand that the Western Wall isn't occupied territory.
He also vowed swift retaliation by recalling 2 of its ambassadors from New Zealand and Senegal that sponsored the resolution and threatened to cut aid. He also said that Israel would reassess its ties with the UN and had ordered a review of the funding of the UN institutions and the presence of the UN representatives in Israel. Prime Minister Netanyahu has also decided to snub Theresa May at next month's Davos meeting in Switzerland in retaliation for Britain's vote. The British and American governments' support and endorsement of the United Nations Security Council Resolution 2334 is shameful. Their involvement in the drafting and wording of the motion was deceitful, and their conspiring with the government of New Zealand to sponsor it was treacherous. The so-called close allies of Israel, Britain and the US, deceived Israel and betrayed the one true democracy in the Middle East. Theresa May, our Prime Minister, has recently expressed her warmth and affection for the Jewish people and Israel, but the actions of her government on this resolution prove differently. Her government should have vetoed the resolution and aligned itself with the new incoming Trump administration to protect Israel against the evil forces that want to destroy her. It is time that the British government woke up to the fact that a two-state solution is dead and unworkable because the Palestinian leadership are working for Israel's destruction and do not seek a genuine, peaceful coexistence with their Jewish neighbours. The Jewish people have suffered one Holocaust at the hands of the Nazis, and placing international pressure on Israel to accept a Palestinian state that could one day be run by Hamas would seriously harm Israel's security and that of the West. We need to make our voices heard regarding this shocking betrayal of Israel by our government by writing to our political representatives and making a righteous stand for God's people and land. Theresa May and her government would do well to take on board the warnings from the Bible in Joel chapter 3, verses 1 and 2. For behold, in those days and in that time, when I shall bring again the captivity of Judah and Jerusalem, I will also gather all nations and will bring them down into the valley of Jehoshaphat and will plead with them there for my people and for my heritage Israel, whom they have scattered among the nations and parted my land. Let us pray that our nation would not be responsible for dividing his land and scattering his people.